Machen wir mal weiter. So, letztes Mal haben wir ein bisschen Zeug übersprungen mit dem ganzen Mahjong-Zeug, das unwichtig war. Gerade ja. Okay, wunderbar. Ja, wie gesagt, das war irgendwie ein komischer Windows-Prozess, der gerade irgendwie extrem das Netzwerk belastet hat bei mir. Der hat sich jetzt wieder gefangen. Ist jetzt wieder ruhig. Hoffentlich bleibt das auch. Und hoffentlich gibt es sonst keine Probleme. Aber da habe ich für den Lag jetzt gerade am Anfang, habe ich wenigstens die Ursache gefunden. Das ist zumindest schon mal schön. Da weiß ich zumindest, was das Zeug verursacht, anstatt nicht zu wissen, was das Zeug verursacht. Und dann angepisst zu sein, weil ich nichts machen kann. Gut, also ja. Heute Higurashi. Machen wir ein bisschen weiter. Und ja, die Spiele von gestern eventuell. Müssen wir mal schauen. Red Dead Redemption. Vielleicht spielen wir es sogar zu Ende. Ich weiß nicht, wie viel da jetzt noch genau kommt. Nicht mehr besonders viel. Aber ja. Schauen wir mal. Okay. The informant named Sato-san had me get into his car before he set off. He favored narrow roads and made numerous short left turns. Checking if we're being followed? Yeah, you know a lot about this. Checking to see if you were being tailed by making left turns was a rather classic technique. If it was just a single pursuer, you could confirm it that way. But if you were being tailed as a team, this archaic method wouldn't let you shake them. Of course, doing it anyway was better than not. I didn't hear anything from the boss as to who you are, Akasaka-kun. Related to the police? If you're familiar with checking for being tailed, the only other possibility I can think of is something like a private detective. If it's not something I have to say, I'd like to refuse to answer that question. My. Ever since we played Mahjong, you seem a lot more mature. I wonder where that hesitant person went from when we first met. I smiled wryly. Looking back now, I had to be a little grateful for being made to play Mahjong. Thanks to that, I was able to relieve some tension. Eventually, Sato-san, confirming that there were no cars following us, slipped outside the city. We were on a pitch-black country road, unable to see anything besides the lights outside. Hello, Broken Mind. The only things I was able to hear were the hum of the car's air conditioning and the chirping of insects and frogs. I heard from the boss that you want to hear a bit about Hinamizawa village, yeah? Like about the old houses known as the three families who control the place, or that right now it's pretty much the Sonozaki family running things. If you know that much already, I'll cut out the introduction. Kann heute wieder nicht anständig lesen. Then, if you would, can you confirm or deny if the Onikafuji Defense Alliance is involved with the kidnapping of Minister Inugai's grandson? Sato-san checked the rear view mirror one more time to confirm there wasn't anybody behind us before speaking. Last night, the Sonozaki main house held a family council. Did you hear about it from the boss? No. If it was a normal meeting, then it would just be all the relatives coming together over a nice cup of tea or something. But a family council held by the main house isn't quite so relaxed. A family council held by the Sonozaki main house. That would be a meeting between those who truly controlled Hinamizawa village. They wouldn't be talking about private family matters. It would be about the village as a whole. About organizing activities against them projects. Among other things, eventually everything would be decided there. In reality, They were deciding the fate of the village. At the head of the meeting was Oryo Sonozaki, more or less called Empress Sonozaki. As the ultimate decision-maker of the clan, she was to be feared and respected. Infirm with old age, she was often unable to stand on her own, but her words carried enough weight to sway the fate of the village. It seemed that lately she had grown weak, and on days where she wasn't feeling well, remained bedridden. Family councils that occurred while she wasn't feeling well took place with her on the floor. In the middle of a dignified Japanese style room, still in a futon, only the upper half of her body sitting upright, a stern look on her face. That was Oryo Sonozaki. Sitting next to her was her ayah, Mion Sonozaki. She was still young. No, young wasn't quite the right word. She was a girl who remained childish. Her role was to merely sit beside Oryo Sonozaki, sometimes responding to her requests, however. She was the only one deemed worthy to succeed Oryo. She had the same hawkish eyes, enough to give pause to anybody who so much as looked at them. Much was expected of her in the future. This granddaughter of the Sonozaki's leader. And also on either side of her sat several other important members of the remaining three families, the Kimiyoshi family and the Furude family. First on the list for the Kimiyoshi family was of course the mayor of Hinamizawa village, Kijiro Kimiyoshi. And lined up beside him were several more of his direct relatives. Opposite them sat the other of the three families, the Furude family. The Furude family was only comprised of the family of a Shinto priest, so the only ones sitting there were said priest, his wife, and their daughter Rika. Rika was doted on by many of the older folks in the village, and it seemed that Oryo was no exception. Ah ja. Ich weiß nicht, ob man das tatsächlich so ausspricht. Moment. Nachfolger halt. H-E-I-R. Erbe, Nachfolge, sowas.
Air.
Air, okay. Also nicht Eier, sondern spricht mal wie die Luft aus. Air. Gut. Gut. Weiß ich jetzt. Air. Ja, stimmt. Habe ich schon mal gehört. Aber das Wort benutzt man halt nicht so oft. While the stress from just attending a family council was said to be enough to shorten your lifespan by 3 days, it seemed like Rika was the only one exempt from that. Deswegen war es völlig... Gut, dass du mich darauf hingewiesen hast. Sonst hätte ich es weiterhin falsch ausgesprochen. Das ist natürlich nicht so toll. No matter how charged the atmosphere was around her, she paid it no mind, instead humming along as she doodled in a sketchbook. In fact, the night before, lying on her stomach while humming and doodling, she nonchalantly tucked her legs into Oryo's futon like it was a kotatsu. All this was the three families. And all around the room, lined row upon row, were relatives of the Sonozaki family. The only ones who were afforded cushions to sit on were direct relatives. The others were left to sit in the Caesar position, directly on the tatami mats. With Empress Sonozaki enshrined at their center, they were almost like a giant snake coiled around the room. It was decided that everybody would sit in order of their rank. Hallo Rezos. The number of people from the Sonosaki family was overwhelming. The fact that the Sonosaki family held so many seats at a meeting where everything pertaining to the village was decided made determining whether the balance of power was held in the three families as clear as day. The number of members in attendance from each of the families directly reflected how much influence they had in ruling Hinamizawa. What was talked about at the meeting? Sato-san, after remaining silent for a while, quietly began to speak. Wasn't our monetary gift of appreciation to the media a little large? Breaking the long moment of silence was the head of the Kimiyoshi family, Kiichiro Kimiyoshi. The Onikafuchi Defense Alliance wasn't a business. They were nothing more than a private organization pushing for the cancellation of the Hinamizawa Dam project with no reliable source of income. Fundraising had always been a problem. When they first started operating, they had managed to collect a sizable amount of funds through donations, but as the conflict dragged on, that amount was steadily declining. This isn't an era where you can get what you want just by throwing rocks. It's very important you don't underestimate the power of the media, and we want to borrow some of that down the road. The expressions of the people related to the Sonosaki family were sullen. As the one who suggested that they should borrow that power was the family head, Oryo Sonosaki. The battle wasn't just about force of arms. In this civilized age, there were civilized methods of fighting. Oryo suggested that creating a strategy incorporating the mass media. Orio's foresight was spot on, and the effects of that plan, while at first unclear, slowly began to manifest. If the physical confrontation at the construction site was meant to delay progress on the dam by even one day, then the propaganda war using the media was aimed at attacking the dam project itself. At first there were those who had doubts about that strategy. But there was nobody now who called those results into question. But in order to maintain those media ties, a colossal amount of money was required. As long as the amount of funds they had was abundant, things would turn out fine. It couldn't be argued that it was a massive expense, but the results spoke for themselves. But with the conflict continuing to drag on, the circumstances had changed. The head of the Sonosaki family, no, the one who sat at the pinnacle of the Hinamizawa's three families, Oryu had suggested the idea herself, so it was already untouchable, and continued to be allowed to drain from the budget. Nobody acknowledged that it should be so allowed, but nobody could say anything. That was the price of dealing with the mass media. What do you think, Oryu-san? The only person who could object to a plan proposed by the head of the Sonosaki household herself was probably Mayor Kimiyoshi. Oryu, with the hard-to-define expression on her face, as if she had severed herself from the fetters of mortal emotion, simply listened quietly to Kimiyoshi's words. But really, it was hard to tell if she was quietly listening or didn't even have the intention of listening at all. Last year, we went through a lot of trouble getting people to wrap their heads around the price hike on the bulletins we were putting out. We convinced them it was just the one time. It just wouldn't do if we had another one this year. Right, Furude-san? The mayor looked to the priest and his wife from the Furude family for affirmation. The priest gave a vague expression, avoiding a prompt response, but his wife gave her answer without a second thought. That's right. The cost of the bulletins are a particularly harsh burden for the poorer families. everybody's dealing with it for the sake of the village. But it's best we don't increase the prices anymore. The bulletin was, as its name implied, a bulletin published by the Onikafuchi Defense Alliance. It outlined the Alliance's activities, ideals and resolve, but you couldn't deny the contents were rather piecemeal. That bulletin's main goal wasn't to inform people, but rather was something to sell to businesses and people living in the village or connected to it, and using those sales to collect funds. In other words, it had become something of a tax. Of course, it didn't have to be said that this was one of the main sources of income for the Onikafuchi Defense Alliance. Originally, purchase was supposed to be voluntary, but in Hinamizawa it had silently become the opposite. In the neighboring towns as well, it seemed that many businesses were buying copies just to avoid butting heads with the Alliance. The priest whispered to his wife to not say anything unnecessary, but was struck down decidedly with a cold glare. Cowering from that glare, the priest shut his mouth. The priest's wife always held the power in their relationship. That was because she was the one who carried the Furude bloodline. The priest merely married into the family. He was nothing more than somebody who adopted the name just to join the three families. He should have been able to find a spot fairly high up in the hierarchy of things. But the lack of authority in his voice meant that he had still not gained any favor. Casting a backwards glance at her rather disparate parents, Rika continued to doodle whimsically without paying them any mind. Signaled by a look from Oyo, Mion brought her ear closer to her grandmother. There, something was said to her in a quiet voice. After responding with a couple questions with a nod from Oreo, Mion looked around the room and conveyed her grandmother's words. There will no freeze on the price increase. There will no freeze on the price increase for the bulletin. Da fehlt ein B. There will be no freeze on the price increase for the bulletin. Kimiyoshi made a face like he had just bit into something unpleasant, but that expression quickly disappeared like it had never happened at all. But Mion-chan, I think you already know this, but the cost of the bulletin is by no means easily affordable. It's a burden carried by everyone in Hinamizawa. If you make people carry too much of that burden, it's possible we'll collapse from the inside. And who on the inside would start that collapse? Who? I didn't mean it like that. I'm asking who would be the first to buckle. Being cross-examined by a girl who still had fragments of childishness remaining within her, the words stuck in Kimiyoshi's throat as he sunk into silence. Mion repeated her question once more, looking around the crowded room. Everybody refrained making eye contact to avoid being pierced by her glare. Gaze. Gleiche. Ist das Gleiche. The words she had spoken were unarguably said in proxy for Oreo. Nom nom nom. That's why when Mion spoke them, they carried the same weight. But the look in her eyes was different. Like Oreo's, they had a hawkish gaze, strong enough that anybody looking upon them would freeze in their tracks and yield. But that gaze was without question one that belonged to Mion herself. As Mion would eventually inherit everything from Oreo, the day when she would stand up as a young and capable leader in her own right would come. Nobody wanted to believe otherwise for even a minute. That's why nobody even thought of Mion as just some sort of little kid. Kimoshi-san, nobody will lose their resolve over something like a price hike on the bulletin. Kamiyoshi, while grumbling a little bit, made a gesture as if to say he had no objection. The expenses related to the mass media will continue. If those expenses become too much, we'll have no choice but to continue the price hike. Mion had rendered her judgment. Everybody bowed their heads, silently listening to her words. In the name of Mion Sonosaki, as acting head of the Sonosaki family, I hereby declare that all this shall be effective immediately. There shall be no objection, and any opposition shall be removed by force. Das ist aber böse. Fast schon diktatormäßig. Eieiei. The formal decree was read aloud, indicating her judgment. There would be no retrial, but there was a certain authority behind those words that even a courthouse couldn't compare to. If she was a judge, she would have banged her gavel, signaling that the matter was settled. Mion pulled out a large bell from inside her clothes and rang it. Everybody present could only prostrate themselves before the harsh sound of the bell. Mafia. Well, that's a rather old-fashioned family council, isn't it? A young guy like you would probably find it hard to believe. In an antiquated place like this, these types of things have firm roots. It was exactly as Uishi had said. The old system of the three families had vanished, and now the Sonosaki family was running things by themselves. On top of that, their rule was borderline despotic. Machthaberisch, willkürlich, despotisch. Gut. Wie spricht man es aus? Despotic. Dankeschön. Was that the end of the meeting? No, there's more. I'll continue. Eventually, after ringing of the bell ceased, there was a deafening silence. Within all of that, a lone man shuffled closer to Mion and whispered something in her ear. Mion asked several questions quietly in response. When she was satisfied, she motioned for the man to leave. The man who talked to Mion was a member of a gang that her father was the leader of. That organization had the entire area of Shishibone City under its control, so it was quite well known even here. Of course, this was talking about the criminal underworld, so it's not like just anybody would know, but just showing a patch with the gang symbol on it was enough to resolve any disputes in the neighborhood. Mion's biological father, to Oryo, was a daughter's husband. The power of that man's gang was the driving force that controlled the dark underbelly of the Onikafuji Defense Alliance. And so that man, from his position as the next in line to control the three families, continued to coerce everybody around him with his unconventional presence. Mion exchanged a look with the father. Was it okay for her to tell what she just heard directly to Oryo? It looked like she was asking him that question. Her father gently but firmly nodded his response. Mion also nodded, then sidled up to Oryo and informed her of something. Eventually, Mion finished conveying her message, separated herself from Oryo, and fixed her posture, waiting for Oryo to signal her response. It wasn't often that Oryo showed any emotion. That's why, when she started to laugh quietly, a vague sense of uneasiness crept over everybody in the room. That's quite the conundrum, isn't it? Oryo was laughing so happily that Kimiyoshi had to hesitantly ask. What is it, Oryo-san? If this land is like a mother to us, then this business with the dam is like somebody threatening our mother's life, isn't it? Kimoshi, unable to comprehend the meaning of her words, looked confused. Oryo, with a wide grin on her face, turned towards everybody and addressed them in a clarion voice. The mister behind the dam project is apparently rattled over the kidnapping of his grandson. That makes us even. That's absurd. Information on the kidnapping of Minister Inugai's grandson shouldn't have leaked from anywhere. How did they know? Even we didn't know much about the kidnapping incident. Exactly how did an acquainted household so far away from Tokyo come to know of it? It was tranquil place. It was a tranquil place. But I couldn't help but have an uneasy feeling about Hinamizawa village. At some point, I had mentally filed this place away as unrelated to the incident at hand. That mental paperwork had just blown away in the wind. How did the Onikafuchi Defense Alliance know about that? Sato-san, unable to come up with an answer, fell into silence. I'm sorry. Please continue. Sure. The Minister of Construction's grandson was kidnapped? Nori-san, is that true? The mayor of an incident was nowhere to be seen. That major of an incident was nowhere to be seen in the newspapers or on TV. But in Hinamizawa, there was nothing strange about Oryo knowing something that the rest of the world didn't. Our pain is the pain of losing a mother. I don't think it completely makes up for it, but the pain of losing a grandchild... He'll have to bear with that for a bit, don't you think? The last question wasn't addressed to anybody in particular. It was as if she was looking for consensus. Still, land and a human child are different things. I don't mind hiding him here, but I want no harm to befall him. The child isn't to blame. Make sure to keep that in mind. That means that the Onikafuchi Defense Alliance were involved in the kidnapping? I can't say for certain. Why? Even though the leader, Oryo, was clearly giving orders on the treatment of the kidnapped child? Lad, you see, this is what the Sonozaki family always does. Always does? What do you mean by that? Let's say there was a particular problem. One that wasn't exactly favorable for the Sonozaki family. If Oryo shows concern over that particular problem, hearing that somebody who attended the family council would be helpful. As a result, Oryo's wish would be granted. However, neither Oryo or anybody else would know who actually did it. With this kind of clever little ploy, the Sonozaki family was able to manipulate events even though they had their hands laid out on the table. Then that means that somebody who was at the family council was the culprit? Or there's the possibility that there was never a culprit in the first place. Oryo herself, in that room full of people, didn't explicitly say that somebody pulled off the kidnapping. She was just giving her opinion. It was an odd and unpleasant secretive way of doing things. Were they involved or weren't they? I couldn't see beyond the veil. This much, however, I could say with certainty. This kidnapping was an ironclad secret. No matter how high a position somebody was in, even they wouldn't know about it. If there was somebody who would know about it, they would be connected to public safety. In other words, one of us. The only other option were people connected to the case itself. Including the minister, there would be people affected by the incident. Or the people that committed it. In any case, there was no way an old household in a place removed from Tokyo by over 6 hours of highway travel should know about it. Them knowing at all was already strange. My suspicions began to accumulate, like falling snow. That's as much as Oreo said in regards to the kidnapping. Hopefully what you wanted to find out was in there. After this, it's up to you. I don't know what kind of work you're doing, but if you're going up against the Sonosaki family, you'd best prepare yourself. Oishi might be fearless, but even he's been attacked 2 or 3 times. He hasn't been wearing it lately, but at one point he was wearing a stab-proof vest while off duty. Oh, thanks for the warning. I'll be careful. You speak pretty well. Are you from Tokyo by any chance? Huh? What's your point? Investigators were always close to danger. It was best not to divulge any information on myself. Your job. Could you possibly be somebody from the Metropolitan Public Safety Division? I couldn't remain silent here. It would be the same thing as admitting it. Huh? No way. This wasn't accounted for in the money I got from the boss. But as somebody who played at the same table today, I'll give you this one as a freebie. After Oreo talked about the kidnapping, there was one other topic that came up. Another topic that Oreo brought up? And right before he told me this, Sato-san asked if I was from the Metropolitan Public Safety Division. In other words, what those 2 things meant caused a chill to run up my spine. So you see, that in order to investigate the kidnapping of the minister's grandson, there's word that there will be an investigator from public safety dispatched all the way from Tokyo. An investigator from public safety? They can't be reckless and make a big deal over the kidnapping. So it seems the Metropolitan Public Safety Division is investigating this on their own. Ain't that grand, huh? What is it? Rika, who had been drawing the entire time and was completely uninterested in the conversation up until now, looked at Oryu with an interested face as soon as the topic of public safety came up. Did the Metropolitan Police come? Oh, so Rika-chama knows about the Metropolitan Police Department. That's very admirable. Who came? Is there anybody that knows what kind of guy from public safety came here? Mion's father raised his hand slightly. I hear that it's a nice young piece of fresh meat. Fresh meat? Is it nice and tender? Ha! Yeah, it is. Fresh meat. Mion's father smiled wryly as he answered Rika's question. Tender and tasty? Yeah. Tender and tasty. Rika smiled with interest. Why did Rika suddenly act interested only when it came to this topic? That was a question that apparently nobody had the answer to. Does Rika-chama know something about this man? I don't know. After a rather flat reply, Rika buried herself underneath Oreo's futon again. But when she buried herself there, Rika no longer started drawing again. Instead, she was making an expression like she was deep in contemplation. What shall we do about him, mother? Mion's father posed the question. He had the type of uncouth expression on his face, indicating that, given the order, he could snuff the problem out at any time. He came all the way to Inamizawa. Let him take it easy for a little while. So you're saying to just let him go around as he pleases? Mion's father asked in response. Oreo smiled thinly as she responded. Leave him alone, but if he starts causing too much mischief, when that happens, don't hold back. I don't enjoy being taken lightly. Is what they talked about apparently. It couldn't be that you're that fresh meat from the Metropolitan Police, are you? It couldn't be. Haha. The sensation of cold, bristling fear began to crawl its way up my back. This family council took place last night. In other words, yesterday. Then today, when I was dressed up as a tourist headed towards Inamizawa, my cover was already blown. When I remembered the first person I met when I got to the bus stop, I couldn't breathe. The person at the family council who expressed interest in the man being dispatched from the Metropolitan Police, Rika Furude. And then the person who was waiting for me the whole time in the bus shelter, Rika Furude. It was an unthinkable image. No, it was a delusion. When we met at that bus shelter, did Rika-chan already know my true identity? Did she know that I was Akazaka, dispatched from the Metropolitan Police Department, and come to meet me? Came, nicht come. Egal, keine Ahnung. Then, including Mayor Kimiyoshi, every villager that I met, everybody knew, but just pretended not to? Because Oreo had given instructions not to interfere? Thinking about it logically, it didn't seem possible. I met quite a number of people. If there's people that are good at acting, then there's people who are bad at hiding things. If there was that many people, then there should have been somebody among them who knew I was from public safety and couldn't hide their hostility. However, I didn't feel any presence like that. But then, even still, why did Oreo tell them to leave me alone? Was it because, if they were careless about it, it would only raise more suspicion? Or was it because they believed a rookie like me wouldn't be able to find anything? Akazaka is a coward. I recalled that strange voice, which could only make me believe that Rika-chan had been possessed. That unknown entity, no matter how you looked at it, knew my true identity from the get-go. And then, how did it warn me again? That's right, it warned me to hurry up and go back to Tokyo. Instead of the realistic worry that the Onikafuji Defense Alliance had discovered my identity, the absurd worry brought on by the unknown girl stuck with me more. What exactly was that girl? What was the thing I would eventually regret? That mysterious girl, Rika Furude. Let's stop this. Everything I was thinking of right now was merely conjecture. Tomorrow, first thing in the morning, I report everything I heard right now to HQ and await further orders. There was no mistaking that the possibility the Onikafuji Defense Alliance were related to this case was there. And that the fact that my cover was blown meant I was in a precarious position. But as everybody at HQ was already extremely busy, they might not be able to spare the support. Is that everything? If you want, I can drop you off wherever you like. Sorry. In that case, the station where we originally met, please. A rural road where even a streetlight was rare. I couldn't see anything. I wasn't aware of anything but the asphalt that was lit up by the headlights. Outside of that light, was it simply darkness? Or was there something lurking there, waiting to strike? I had to think I drew the short straw here. I wanted to go back to Tokyo. For some reason, the voice of the girl warning me to go back to Tokyo still lingered in my head. Kapitel fertig. Okay. Also, Akazaka ist in Gefahr. What's in the box? What's in the box? Save. Ende Kapitel 3. Wunderbar. Beim nächsten Mal, nächste Woche, fangen wir dann Kapitel 4 an.